Man, I love the Skoolie life. Look at this place. Gorgeous. Huh? Where's that thing we put in here to keep it warm? Oh. Come on. Winter's coming.
There's no escape.
Why don't you just chill out? Hey, Writing and Skoolie gang. Here to deliver on a promise I made a little while ago. Today we're going to talk about how to survive the winter in a Skoolie if you live in a converted school bus like my wife and I do. My last video about supporting character help tended to go a little long, so I'm going to try and keep this one a little bit shorter. Sorry, I had to include a fun little intro. The holiday spirit just possessed me, and it still hasn't fully let go. So happy holidays, everyone, no matter what you celebrate. Alright, disclaimer, also, living in a Skoolie over the winter isn't nearly as bad as that intro made it look. I just really needed to use comedy as a way to vent, because lately I've been a little frustrated with some of the challenges we faced from the winter. The truth is, though, if you are going to live in a Skoolie over the winter and you're not prepared, the difference in life between warm weather and the winter can be pretty damn jarring. So hopefully this video will serve as both a warning and an invitation for advice, honestly, for us too. If you've dealt with problems like this before, in a different way than we have, please leave a comment below. I'm all open for ideas. It may not be glamorous to talk about the things that have gone wrong with the school bus. I mean, bus life is under enough scrutiny as it is. But I also, you know, if you own a home, you're going to face challenges of your own. And I think it's important to be proud of where you live, especially if you built it, even in the tough times, even when it's not in the best shape it could be in. I'm trying to reshape my mindset into something more healthy. And hopefully, maybe seeing the way that we've fallen down will help you to either avoid those pitfalls or get back up again and keep trying. Now, this first tip only comes with the benefit of hindsight. Due to the nature of living in a home on wheels, a lot of people that move into Skoolies don't exactly know where they're going to end up. Katie and I completely fell into this category. We were kind of planning on chasing warmer weather, moving north and south as the seasons kind of urged us to. But then Katie got this awesome job in Virginia, so surprise, surprise, we were moving south. But not so far south where it stays completely warm throughout the winter. Needless to say, we could not have been prepared for such a drastic jump in climate. Those of you who have seen my other videos know that our heat source is our wood stove, which you saw in the intro video. The stove works amazing to keep it warm in here, as long as someone's around to tend it. That's all well and good during the day. I'm here, I work from home doing these videos for you guys and writing, so I'm here to tend it all day. But with Katie working full-time, taking shifts to wake up every 2 hours or so throughout the night to keep the fire alive, sometimes having to relight it and wait a little bit before you can go back to sleep, you can imagine how fun that is. I lied, it wasn't fun at all. So we got an electric space heater to bridge the gap. Do the wood stove during the day, the electric heater at night. Problem is, the electric heater was draining our battery bank. Even if we had the batteries plugged in to charge via shore power, the heater would drain the power faster than it could charge. So what we ended up doing was installing actually a second shore power plug and wiring that up through the bottom of the bus to a special set of outlets that completely bypasses our inverter and our batteries. It just gets power directly from the meter, from the shore power outside, which goes straight to high power appliances like the heater. You know, in the summer we may use it for an air conditioner. Cutting a hole in the side of the bus for the plug, cutting a hole in the bottom of the bus to run the wire up. All of it was just projects we didn't think we were gonna have to do. Especially any kind of project like that you have to do while it's cold, you know, while you're tending the stove. It's a different ballpark. Another heat source option, if you haven't chosen yours yet, is actually propane heat. It can be a little bit expensive to install, but and we considered it. But with the size of our propane tank that's actually mounted to the bus, we would have needed an external one that was really big. And then to hook that up to the propane system, we would have had to add some extra piping inside. Overall, it suited us better to do the shore power bypass plug for the electric heater. The bottom line of this tip in this lesson is to know your heat source inside and out, what kind of maintenance it's going to take, if it's feasible to run it all the time. Like our stove, we need a constant supply of wood. It's just details that you have to factor in before it comes time where, okay, we need this to stay warm. Make sure you know all that stuff before you go into the cold weather. It is surprisingly easy to shrug it off when you're warm and comfortable. Oh, we'll figure it out later. Figure it out beforehand. It will save you an ass load of trouble. Our next tip is going to be about heat loss. So you've got your heat source. Now you need to figure out how to keep that heat inside, how to conserve it. You see the bane of my existence that blots out my sunlight 80% of the days. There are a few things you can do to help prevent losing the heat you're going to make. First, foremost, insulate. Always insulate. If you're not sure, if you want to insulate it, insulate it. Anything you can think of. Anything that slips your mind, insulate it. Katie and I did rigid foam insulation throughout the bus. We have 1 inch in some places, 1.5 inches in others. And then those weird cracks and crevices we used spray foam for. Great stuff, works really well. What we didn't insulate are the ribs of the bus. This was one of our greatest mistakes, which I couldn't have foreseen it before, you know, it was actually time and it started getting cold in here. We worked in the bus through a winter and we didn't see that much trouble with condensation because we weren't keeping it so warm in here. We didn't have our animals, so it didn't cross our minds, oh, it's going to be so much warmer in here than it is outside, so we should insulate these ribs to prevent condensation. Because the ribs of the bus are steel, you see, and the steel of those ribs touches the cold, frigid outer shell of the bus, which is also steel. So there's a lot of cold transfer and heat loss through that. The outside of the bus gets as cold as it is outside, then the ribs get cold, and then the ribs touch what? The screws that attach the ceiling to the ribs. So the screws get really cold, which leads to a lot of condensation and these watermarks, but we will get to that later. But this problem could have been prevented if we had insulated the ribs. You can't exactly insulate as you go though. So what can you do after the bus is living ready to help you conserve the heat you make? That would be these babies. This is no fun, but if you're gonna be in a really frigid temperature, you may want to do what we've done here, which is to put some foil insulation, it's really thin, over the windows, and this stuff here is Gorilla Tape with the frightening subtitle, Permanent. It is super sticky. It can rip your fingerprints off. It will leave black marks on anything it touches, but it also holds things up really well. These have been up for like a month, and there's only tiny little spots where it's starting to peel, but there's no sign that this insulation is going to fall down. We also have these upper foil sheets, which are up most days, to be honest, and we just kind of slide them in here like that, and we put these on every single window on the top, except for like 1 or 2 for light, so that I don't feel like I'm being suffocated by darkness all the time, and that does a really good job of keeping the heat in. But it's a nice day, so let's get this the hell out of here for now. One of the many perils of living in a school bus is they have a ton of windows, unless you've done work to seal them up, to take them out and replace them with something. These windows are great for light during the warm weather and cold weather, but they also let a lot of heat escape. They also get super cold to the touch, so if it's super warm in your bus, super cold outside, you're gonna get tons of condensation. But again, we'll get to that later. Another thing you can do to minimize heat loss in your Skoolie is to wrap the lower part of the bus around the wheels where air can get underneath to kind of seal it up as best you can. People have told us that this really helps with, you know, it doesn't let a draft under the bus and kind of suck heat out through the floor. We have a lot of things that we don't want to keep in the bus. We want to store outside, like our gigantic piles of wood for the stove. So we did not wrap the underneath of our bus yet, but that is an option if you're looking for other ways to conserve your heat. Condensation. Just the word makes my spine wrinkle now. This is something that neither Katie nor I had ever even heard of before we moved into our bus, and it drives me just a little bit bonkers. It was something I totally didn't expect. I thought the challenge was going to be keeping the bus warm, and it's really not. It's the destruction that's caused by the bus being so much warmer than it is outside, and the biggest problem with that is the condensation. So if you have some kind of story about condensation and how you deal with it, please share it in the comments below. I would love to read up on what else we can do to minimize condensation in the air. In short, it's been our most stressful, hair-graying, destructive problem since we moved into the bus. The problem with school buses is that they're kind of predisposed to have condensation. Their frame and outer skin is metal. Metal gets really hot when it's hot outside, it gets really cold when it's cold outside. And just the nature of you living in it, you're going to want to be warm or cool and comfortable in that happy medium that the outside world doesn't really like to be. So you revert to your primal self, and you start to grow hair in places where you... See where this is actually going though? Water. Everywhere. You can circumvent most of this by insulating properly, which we thought we did. We insulated the floor, we insulated the walls, we insulated the ceiling. Every single surface in this bus is insulated at least a tiny bit. Even the stairs, everything. Even with the foil on our windows, they still get condensation on them, right on the foil. It's not nearly as much as it used to, and it's not really enough to cause too much of a problem anymore. When we just had the bare windows and the hot air would hit it, we would get pools of water on our windowsills. It was starting to get into the walls and just drip down on everything. It was like the daily towel run to swipe it all up. And then it smelled like dank towels in here. It wasn't great. So the foil helped, even if it didn't completely fix the problem. Now the ceiling. Ceiling used to be one of our biggest prides. The screws generate so many water droplets from that condensation that it leaches out into the ceiling, creating these huge wet spots, and then when those dry out, they leave these horrendous watermarks everywhere. Not glamorous to talk about, you know, maybe making myself sound like an idiot here, but I think it's important to stay proud of living in here. Otherwise you can just, it's a black pit of despair and discouragement. And hopefully that sharing this experience will help you guys. So hopefully when summer comes and it's warm enough for us to put the animals outside in their travel cages for a day, we can do some coats of marine gloss or stain on the rest of the ceiling to seal it up, prevent that water from leaching out into the sealed wood, and I'm really hoping that will cover up the watermarks too. Because of condensation, we also had to remove all of the natural rope that we used in windows as trim. Condensation was forming on the windows, pooling, dripping, and soaking into the rope, and then LB turned into Mold City. I'm not talking like a couple black spots, I'm talking like fuzzy forests growing out of our windows. So I ripped out all the rope, and we are currently in transition here, replacing that trim with flexible vinyl so that the water will pool instead of soaking in and we can wipe it up. Just an interim solution for now. There are a couple things you can do to mitigate the humidity besides insulating. You can get a dehumidifier. We happen to live at a campground right now where we have to pay an electric bill based on how much shore power we use, so we do not have a dehumidifier quite yet. We do, however, have canisters of damp rid crystals everywhere in the bus. I think we have 6 of them or 7 of them right now sitting around. And what damp rid is basically this harmless, scentless chemical compound that it's a crystal, and it sucks moisture out of the air and then dissolves and becomes water in the bottom of a container. When the crystals are all either melted or congealed, you dump them out, you dump the water, and then you can pour in refill crystals, and there you go. You have another, month and a half or so of moisture absorption. And believe it or not, this does seriously help with the level of condensation everywhere. I notice much less when the damp rids are in good shape. Another thing you can do to mitigate the humidity and thus your condensation is just super simple. Open a window. Especially when you're cooking and when you're showering, things that are going to generate a lot of water vapor and a lot of hot air, make sure you crack a window. We don't crack the window for when we have a fire usually, because that is just letting out the heat that we are making. But when humidity is more so the concern, we always have a window crack near where the steam and humidity is coming from, so it goes out instead of up into our screws and into our soles. So there you have it, everybody. A couple things you should know for your first winter in a Skoolie. It's certainly possible. It's even plausible to be comfortable and happy throughout the whole winter. I'm sure that things will look up after we get used to it more. You know, it's only been like really harsh winter for maybe like a month. But you should know the you know, the costs and the things that you're gonna have to do to make sure everything's all right. Know your heat source. Know how to adapt to prevent heat loss. Be prepared for condensation. You remember all that, and you'll survive the winter too. Who knows? Maybe there's even hope for me. Remember, if you've got a winter Skoolie story, please share it in the comments below. I really want to hear if you guys have had similar times in your Skoolie over the winter, or if you're having a blast and, you know, you're like, what's he doing wrong? Or, you know, maybe you set your Skoolie on fire and ran away, and you're like, oof, man, give it another month. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to support what I do here with the Roadside Writer. You can support me on Patreon in the link below. You can also access my website and subscribe to me there in a link below. In the banner on any page. You'll get emails with updates about writing and Skoolie stuff and courses and blog posts. My first writing course is under development, so be ready for that. Roadside Writer, out.